Hi, welcome to the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. I'm Dr. Sarah Gordon. I'm the founder and I'm the host of the show. Today, I would like to welcome a distinguished guest. His name is Kurt Madden. And I know if you're in the triathlon world or the endurance world, you know this name. But this podcast is for a broader audience. So I want to educate them a little bit about your remarkable athletic and professional career. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gordon. I'm just delighted. I think I was awake all last night, just anticipating an opportunity to be on your podcast to kind of share my story and just engage with listeners.
Thank you so much. And I know I don't really know you personally. I mean, our paths have crossed a bit, but you have graciously given me the opportunity to call you Coach K.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've been called quite a bit in my life, but I think the Coach K would be appropriate. That is somehow, as I have just traveled, I think I'm perfectly fine with that. And
Okay.
yeah, let's go ahead and get rocking and rolling.
And did I also read somewhere Mad Dog?
Boy, yes.
Is that does that
Yeah,
bring back memories?
it does. When I was a little bit younger and out of control in an inner city environment, they called me AKA Mad Dog, but I've tried to convert to maybe Mad Man, which is, a dog to a man. But yeah, I can be a little fierce and a little determined at times.
That's awesome. I I'm only going to say this because I think that it exemplifies something that I talk about a lot on this podcast and what my dissertation research was all about is that you're 70 years old and you are a very active athlete, you train. You just did Ironman Texas this past weekend. Congratulations on
Thank
that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, every race that I do, the number one goal is to finish it. So this one was special, and I am just so grateful to have. It was an excellent day, and it was just a good vibe out there with everyone, and I learned a lot. It's like I've put in another tree in the ground, and it's about learning and growth and opportunities, and that tree will come back to me. I know every time I do another Ironman, is I'm going to have this huge forest around me to say, oh my gosh, this is going to keep me alive and I can breathe and I can kind of go through that whole thing just like trees naturally do.
I love that analogy. And the reason I mention your age is, it's kind of the mentality within the Ironman world that anything is possible. And I would like to add anything is possible across the lifespan. Because as we know through this terminology called ageism, there's this old narrative that aging is supposed to be kind of marked by decline and by age-related disease and all these kinds of things that, you know, um, is a different trajectory. And so a person such as yourself teaches all of us through this episode and through my podcast and through my dissertation research, which was with older triathletes, that there
Mhm.
can be a much different narrative in aging. It can be with vitality and good health and sports participation. And so I commend you and congratulations. And you also won your age group. So I want to make sure.
Yeah, I did. I was very pleased. You never know when you're out there that you have a tracker that is supposed to track your performance, but I've learned is that sometimes the data and or accuracy is inaccurate. So it's best just to be consistent, do your best to finish strong. And it's nice to be competitive, but I've learned in an Ironman, you're really racing against the course. That's the ultimate. It's like you're climbing the mountain. It's not who's going to get there first, but I'm gonna develop my character and be a better person during the climb. The summit is the finish, but really it's all about what you're doing along the way. So I always start each race that way that, the competition's going to push me, but at the end of the day, it's really about the actual distance and the course.
And just for some of our listeners, because they're not all necessarily triathletes who listen to this show. The
Hmm.
the Ironman, the full Ironman, see if I get this correctly. It's a 2.4 mile open water swim,
Correct.
then immediately followed by a 112-mile bike ride,
Correct.
then a transition into a 26.2 mile run, and this is done all in a day. And for a lot of us, if we ever do it, we do it once. But for an individual such as yourself, you've done this, this has been a lifestyle for many years. So
It
it's,
has. Yeah, I think this was actually not that I'm really OCD on counting, but as I'm tracking, this actually was number 54. So I think when I look at, 54 Ironmans, that it's taught me just a wealth about life. It parallels life so much. And I'm just grateful to, be able to still race at a high level and do the best I can every day in my training and my life and my profession, and also go out there and have fun just like a kid.
so that's a good segue into I kind of want to take you back to the beginning. I know from reading about your athletic career that and from speaking with you before we started today that you did your first Ironman in 1980. And that was
Correct.
in how do you say it?
Oahu. Oahu. Yeah,
Oahu,
Oahu, on the island of Oahu.
the island of Oahu, 1980. And I
Mhm.
want to point out to our listeners that the first Ironman that was developed by John and Judy Collins was 1978.
Mhm.
So Kurt showed up 2 years later. So this is very early on. These are the original pioneers of the sport. So what happened that day in 1980? Because here we are, 2026, and you just did Ironman Texas. So you must have fallen in love with it. Maybe it's and the term Ohana, maybe it's the whole concept of that. What happened that day?
Yeah, it seems like really, even though it was, I want to say, give or take 46 years ago, it is just still fresh in my mind. I can remember that day vividly. But to do a little backdrop, I was living at the beach. I was, what, 21 years old, and there was this swim run swim competition, and I figured, what the heck, I won't even train. I'll just, enter this puppy. And before I knew it, I'm racing these lifeguards with a half a mile swim around the pier, a 5.5 mile run on the beach, just with your literally with your Speedo on, like a lifeguard competition, and swimming again. And out of 400 people, I was like 30th, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this was really cool. So the next year, I decided that I would train a little bit. I didn't train then like I train now, but I did a couple simulations, and then I was third. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I had to kind of do a little self-check, like, you've got a little bit of talent here. And then the guy that put on the event, Tom Warren, he won the Ironman in 1979. So Tom pulls out a Sports Illustrated, and Tom's on the cover. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Tom. He says, yeah, this is called the Ironman, and I want it. And I think in the moment I was just, my pupils totally dilated. It was like endorphin rush, like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, he says, yeah, just pay the $20 entry fee, get a bike, and just swim, bike, and run, and then I'll see you there. And before I knew it, that's what I did. So on to race day at Waikiki, the surf was breaking at 20 feet. So they had to move the swim to Ala Moana Harbor, and they literally just set up two lane lines. But I'll never forget the pre-race meeting. They said, "Hey, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and race tomorrow, and the only thing you have to remember is don't cheat. Do you have any questions?"
Wow.
That was it. And it was an open
Wow.
course. So they kind of, you had your crew follow you along. And I had a great swim. I was pretty consistent on the bike. Had some challenges on the run because they just gave us a little map to follow as you're going through, and there was traffic. And because again, there was only 99 people. So it was much different than the races we see today. And I had a moral dilemma at mile 16. My wife is yelling at me to pick it up, but there was Tom Warren. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have an opportunity. Do I sit back and honor my mentor, or do I take a chance? And I said to myself in the moment, being much younger, I'll take a chance, and I passed Tom. So I was seventh overall, finished right there at Capilano Park, and Jim Lampley was there, Diana Nyad, ABC Wide World of Sports, and I thought in the moment it was like a Woodstock, like the Jimi Hendrix, Carlos Santana, like that's it. This thing was, I'm glad I'm here. This was like super cool, and had my dolphin shorts on, and it was just back in the day. And little did I realize from that day right there what it was going to do to my life, thinking, hey, I can check the box. I'll get back to graduate school and finish my thesis in exercise physiology. But from there, things literally just started taking off before the internet, and that was after the Morse code, but we actually had newspapers and the word got out. And then from there, that kind of went right into my career as a professional triathlete.
It's remarkable. And I've interviewed a lot of people through my dissertation research and through my podcast. And what I find so remarkable is the level of detail. the level of
Mm.
detail you remember from back then, which shows me that it like it was passion, it was something that really that you just fell in love with to remember all those details. I just find that really incredible.
Mhm. Yeah,
And in interviewing, a lot of triathletes who were in the sport many, many years ago, it has changed so much, right? Like
yes,
you would write in a paper ballot and you would find out the results in a newspaper. And so I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but since we're talking about, I'm just curious because you just did an Ironman this past weekend, like it's changed a lot.
it has.
Is it, in your perspective, is that, have we evolved in a good direction? Or is it just, you know, I don't know how much you want to say, but I mean, it's just so different.
Yeah, I think, evolving is a part of life, and we know the one thing is people that as we've gone through life, we can all look back on the past 5 or 6 years in our world and how it's changed so much. And I think
So
our
much.
sport, it's inevitable that it has to change, but you have to accept change and also honor the deep roots of the very beginning and try to cherish that and hold on to it and kind of keep that same vibe as long as you can. And there's things beyond our control. But I think change is good because, when we look at just the fundamental, that has not changed. You're going to swim, bike, and run and finish. And John Collins' his famous line was swim 2.4 miles, bike 112, run 26.2, and brag the rest of your life. Back then, and where that started, I know John really well. In the military, it was kind of like a Top Gun thing that
Mhm.
you can imagine like a Tom Cruise, but it's evolved. And I don't think really that per se, I don't need to brag the rest of my life. I think it's just part of what I do. I'm way over, everything that I've done as far as accomplishments, but it's giving back and doing that. So I think it's good that we have changed. I think the majority of changes are very positive and very good for people to have a good race experience, stay in the sport, understand the lifestyle. But I'm really thrilled about, I know that, and it was mentioned by Paul Kay, the announcer at Ironman Texas, that it's hard for maybe a listener who hasn't done an Ironman to really appreciate it. But I can go back to my first one and how it changed me. And I know this for anyone on this planet that has a little bit of grit and tenacity, if they would complete a full Ironman, if I had the perfect foundation, I would get everyone a free entry. I know that for years and years and years and years, it will change your life to teach you more about resilience and consistency and perseverance and tenacity and pivoting and adapting. Because literally, in the moment when you're in the arena, when you're swimming, biking, and running, and you're just out there, you have to deal with that. And I think it's a lifelong lesson. So, the return on your investment by committing to one Ironman, words can't even describe.
Very profound. And as you're talking, I was thinking about the PhD journey too, and that's where I draw the parallels between our those two worlds. And I like to call the guests that come on the show resilience warriors, because
Mhm.
I truly think when you put yourself in really hard spaces,
Mhm.
whether academic, professional, athletic, you learn so much about yourself, right? Putting yourselves in a very uncomfortable space, you learn how to dig yourself out. And I think that's the journey, the Ironman journey too, is when you're out there by yourself, you just don't know. It's kind of like life. You don't know what's going to come, your way, and you have to draw. I like to say the strength for the journey within. You kind of have to draw from somewhere deep to get you through it. So, and today we're talking about a growth mindset and how do we push boundaries of excellence. So in your experience, like, where does that come from? Where do you find that mindset to help other people who might be struggling and, you know, an Ironman is a very far distant goal. Like they're just trying to get through their day or something. How do we help people find strength?
Yeah, and as I look back literally on my life, the shortened version that I'm actually writing a book right now, and I've got some chapters on that. But for me, growing up in kind of a dysfunctional home with two parents, there were 9 marriages, no one graduated from high school. I was inner city. I ran away at 14. I had a
Wow.
heart condition when I was 5 years old. I mean, it was just all over the board. How I'm still alive today is just truly amazing. But I think it's something that when you face that adversity that you start to develop, like what's going to get me out of here? And I know I was bound and determined to say I'm going to have a better life. And I think too that when you look at what it really comes down to is I studied in education like you, and I have been in the athletic arena and study people that are leaders. I study people that have succeeded. I think it really comes down to I'm just going to say it. I think mindset is so key. And as I listen to people, they always talk about, the mind is the deciding factor. It's you have the physical aspect, but it's mentally what you're doing. And I think it's embracing that every day that I think the separation many times is mindset, and it's that growth mindset. It's going to be challenging. It's not a fixed mindset that you're like entitled, that, I was born smart and I shouldn't have to work very much. You have to be hungry, you have to be humble, and know that you're going to actually succeed much, much more when you fail because it's not a permanent fixture. And I know this as I do consulting, as I've worked with kids and, staff members and things like that. We're gonna have speed bumps, but it's just literally hanging on during those moments to say, I've got to check my mindset because that's the one thing I do have control over. Everything else it isn't. And I think as we go through life, when you look back in your rear view mirror and then look forward at your windshield of opportunity, the windshield of opportunity starts right here. And I know that most of my coaching is done literally from the shoulders up. The 9 inches right here is the most important thing
I love
versus
that.
from here down. It pretty much is wired. It's going to go pretty well. So I think mindset is if I just check all the boxes, people that continue to be successful wherever they are, as a parent and the work they're doing, whatever they're doing in life, I have to go back to always, I think the common thread is mindset, just like with you with your work. Hey, it was grueling, it was punishing, you question yourself, you
Yes,
doubted
I
yourself,
did.
you had moments, but it was
Almost
that
wanted to
mindset.
quit. I will tell you just to add to that is I think community, sense of community, because I did have friends in the program that, when I days, well, one, I always felt like if I was going to quit, maybe I needed a nap because I was just fatigued. But two, having people around you, good friends and people to say, to help push, to help pull you along. So I think community is really important too. Yeah. And when you talk about mindset, so my dissertation was framed within a theoretical framework called self-determination theory. And it talks about like a continuum of like being extrinsically like having no motivation and extrinsic motivation towards intrinsic motivation. And so the theory says that the more intrinsically motivated we are, the more autonomous or autonomy we have in our decisions. So we believe we can take actions to move our lives forward. So the actions you've taken in your life to get educated, to pursue the Ironman, to create a different life for yourself, they all came from within. So we have to part of and this is a good transition into coaching because part of being a coach and part of for me being a health promotion leader is teaching people how to feel like they have more control over their life so they can have a more quality of life so they can become more self-actualized in their life. And so something I found interesting in my dissertation research is a pattern of the older triathletes in my study, 65 and older, all use words like enjoyment and fun and challenge myself and compete against myself. These are all statements that indicate a pattern of being highly intrinsically motivated.
Mhm.
So, with that, as a coach and as a health promotion leader, how do we move people from if somebody's listening to us today and feels like they don't have any control over their life, they want to get fit, but they're living a sedentary lifestyle. They're in a bad space. How do we help people move towards being more autonomous and
Yeah,
intrinsically motivated and
right.
mindset?
Right. Yeah, I think that is the question. And I've learned, like you said, like we often say, that if you want to go fast, go solo. And I think our generation right now, and just the way
Oh,
the world is that, and just listening to my sons who are older now, they just tell me, Dad, people are just moving so quickly. They're just hopping from this to this versus, I should probably slow down a little bit, and I should play that long game. And in doing that, I think I have learned it's better to go as a team. That I admire Simon Sinek and a lot of things that he's done. And together is better without a doubt. And I know even a sport of triathlon, when you're out there as an individual, you are doing it yourself. You're swimming, biking, and running, but you got to remember a lot of things here. Your whole team got you there. And
Right.
talk about your team. If it's your spouse, for me, it's Kelly Queen K, 47
Okay.
years. She knows me inside and out. And she's that guiding light to be accountable, to be supportive, the good days, the bad days. But I think too, when you're out there in a race with, say, Texas, 2,000 people, you're not alone now. You have 2,000 people with you, and it's like, wow, all that energy that you can
Mhm.
feed off of, and it's really, really fulfilling. Then you add all the spectators and or volunteers, there's another 2,000. So now it goes from one to your team to 2,000 to 4,000 to 5,000. And I think in doing that, as you look at longevity, and you know this with your research, is that when you look at the deciding factor on longevity, it's about those relationships. It's about community.
It
It's
is
like the blue
enjoyment.
zones live to be 100. If I
Mhm.
don't make 100, hey, I'm fine. My cup is flowing over right now. But I think that really talks a lot about relationships, is that you've got to continue to do that. And I know in our sport that we have a certain small, groups of people that we've raced together for years. And I go back to what the names you shared, though. I know the majority of those people, and I'm still active. And that's one benefit of social media, is you can stay connected with people. But I think it's very fulfilling. And you go together and you support each other and lean on each other, and we're going to lose people along the way. But I think at the end of the day, it's really good. So going back to your question, anyone that is wanting to be successful and you want a
Mhm.
huge return on your investment, just like anything you do, I
Mhm.
have learned this repeatedly in my life. Go with a guide. Go with a guide that knows the lay of the land, that is going to be your bestie, that's going to be in your foxhole, that's going to really keep you kind of from going off the rails. And in doing that, if you have a good consultant or a coach that really knows you, and you've got an optimal training program that you can follow that's really measuring all of your metrics, wherever you are in the continuum of beginner, intermediate, advanced, I work with people that are 21 years old, and my oldest client is 87 years old, that a coach pays huge dividends because I have a coach and it's Queen K. And I think anyone that doesn't have a coach, they're kind of really missing out on how, and I pose that in my mastermind classes that I facilitate. And this is what coaches tell me. And I don't even kind of tell them this is what I think. I just say, what are you guys thinking? They tell me with a good training platform and a coach that your performance is going to be enhanced at least 30% more. Why? Because again, it's the 9 inches above the shoulder. And I think having that thought partner is really, really key. It's just like in school. Hey, turn, pair, share. Let's talk it through. That's when you
Mhm.
assimilate. And I think it's important to verbalize that. And when you start to do that and you develop that trust, that if I work with a client, I can take two people and make it to four to six to eight. Why? Because we are connected at the hip and we're grounded in excellence. And their why is very close to my why. And in doing that, they're just like, man, I didn't even realize I could do that. So that's a win for them and it's a win for me.
Like every time I'm just gonna be honest, like you know, I'm just in awe. And every time you talk, I have to like let it sink in for a second. So those are those pauses. Like, wow, because I learned so much on this platform. One thing I want to say is when you said that the names I mentioned, I before we started to record, I had shared
Mhm.
this book with Kurt.
Uh-huh.
It's called Where It All Began by Tom
Uh-huh.
Knoll.
Yeah.
And it's a great short story about where the Ironman started and the original um, athletes. I don't even know if they called themselves triathletes back then, but the original, um, what would you say? They were
I'd be okay with triathletes.
triathletes who showed up that
Uh-huh.
their names are listed in this book. So if you're interested, it's a really great little book. Okay, that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing, yes, community, and I did find that in my research. I found enjoyment, the health benefits, mental health, physical health, cognitive health, all those things, and sense of community and camaraderie. So those are all very strong exercise motivators for people. But my question, I have one, I just want to push a little bit further on that question is like, so how do you get somebody to even take that first step? Like a strategy? Like how do you? guess somebody who doesn't feel like they have that much control over their life, maybe with like a personal, like a fitness goal or wanting to go back to school or start a new business, or how do we motivate somebody to take that first step?
That is the key. I've learned this through my my work in science that an object at rest will remain at rest unless there is an outside force that acts upon that object. And I think it's taken just a baby step. Just saying, what do I have to lose here? Why don't I put my faith into somebody else versus, hey, I know it all. Again, I'm going to go solo. I don't need any help. I think it's just like selling a house that a lot of people say, I can sell my house. And I tell them very nicely, go for it. I want you to really do your best and I hope it works out. Or I've got a plumbing issue in my house. I can do it. Awesome. Go for it. Now if you've made your fourth trip to Home Depot and you're still in this cul-de-sac of the circle and water's running all over your house, you might have said, I might have contacted a professional. So I think it's something to do your due diligence in finding the right fit for you. I know that, as anyone looks at a SWOT analysis, their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities and threats, try to find a consultant or a coach that works with them and try it for at least 90 days. That's the other thing I found. And I tell people candidly as I'm onboarding, you can stop anytime, but try it for 90 days. You can't do it one time and say it didn't work. You've got to really do that and then assess. And I think in doing that, if you have the right fit, that it's a huge investment. It's really about being a lifelong learner. And Sarah, you know this and your little community that those professional learning groups are really, really key. And I know I look back and they literally saved me many times in education of losing my mind after 2 or 3 rough days as a principal. I just drive home like I'm either crying or I'm saying obscenities out the window because I had a rough day. So I think as a person is looking to transform, it is a huge investment, but making sure that that works for you, meaning that the client and the coach to make it a win-win. And I think there'll be no regrets at all.
Another pause. I gotta,
Well, and the other
everything
fact,
you say has so much
uh,
wisdom in it and based on experience, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge,
uh,
a lot of,
right.
a lot
The
of
other,
life.
and I want to go on the record to say this, in our sport of triathlon, especially in the longer distance, the ratio of men to women, it's off. It's like 75 to 25 or 80 to 20 men to women.
I've heard
I think
that.
that's unfortunate. And I know too that most moms, and all due respect, and or professional women, they can't commit to 15 hours a week of training for a full Ironman because they've got kiddos and all those other responsibilities.
Yeah.
However, I know that in a coaching consulting role, I know this for sure that 70% of clients are women. So, guys, I want to push on you a little bit now to say we should follow the lead there because the women are smarter than us. And, even though some people think they're from a different planet, they're not. And if women are doing this and taking the lead, I think it is showing. And I know when I look at my roster, I'm probably right there. I'm about 70-30 with women to men. And that tells me it's making that connection and really getting to know them and learning their why and coming alongside them. But I think women are they're many times much more coachable. However, with men, I've had great success, and I'm just honored that when I look at my retention rate over the past 10 years, it's been extremely high. It's probably in the 80%, but we know life changes and people have to drop for whatever
Yeah.
reason or health issue. But yeah, I think in this, I would ask anyone, tell me why you wouldn't do that. Tell me why. And that kind of goes into the AI thing. Some people are like, well, I don't need a coach. I've just got chat. I'm like, well, you got chat, you got Claude, name it whatever you want to. But I know one thing for sure. If you have a really live person and they're good and they have a high level of emotional intelligence, they can do much more than just AI. But if they use AI and their EQ, so you've got the IQ and the EQ blended together, bam, things just accelerate and so does performance.
I'm thinking of two things as you were just sharing that. I had Paul Capuzzo on a couple of weeks ago, Capuzzo Multisport. He's in the New Jersey area. He mentioned the top three triathletes in the world, I guess, all have coaches. I mean, I
Mhm.
think the people who are really the professionals at the top, that they're not relying on AI. I mean, maybe in some way, but they still have coaches. So I think AI. AI is a tool. I just had a conversation last episode with a friend, Trevor Rowe, who's in kind of that IT space. And
Mhm.
AI is a great tool, but it doesn't give us the humanity that a coach gives us, to understand maybe what we're going through on a personal or emotional level in a given day when we're dealing with human motivation, which is a complex area to study. So,
Right. And I
and
would
then,
echo that. I think with humanity too, the other thing that we want to remember is that I find that it really the human element helps remove those blind spots. And
yes,
again, I think that is really key when you look at top performers, that you don't need to go kind of OCD on it, but you need to do your best to remove those blind spots and be okay with that. Like I wasn't right. The ladder was against the wrong wall. And AI, like you said, is a great tool, but it's not the end all. You need a
right.
combination of things. And that way it just blends a lot better together. And I don't think a coach, to be very candid, I don't think a coach will ever be replaced because if you look back in our history, that great coaches have really transformed any athlete at any level because of who they are as a human.
Yes, I agree with that. I also wanted to go back to when we were talking about mindset, and because this podcast episode focused
Mhm.
on growth mindset to achieve excellence. I think in anything that you're pursuing, academic, athletic, personal, professional, a strategy to move from, like I was saying, extrinsic to intrinsic motivation is to be open, like you said, be open to a coach, to be open to a teacher, to not go into something that you think you know everything, to have some grace and understanding that you don't, and not be defensive with it. Just be open to learning. And you said it early on about lifelong learning. I think when we allow ourselves kind of to open up our mind,
Mhm.
we can move towards excellence and have a growth mindset. I learned that on my PhD journey. We had a class and we had a teacher. Oh, he was tough. He was so tough. He hazed us, I think. And, a lot of people quit. Well, I wouldn't say a lot. People quit. People complain. Some of us kind of got through it and looked back and said, I think he was right. I think we were writing like a blog post. We weren't writing scientifically.
Mhm.
Allowing yourself to let other people teach you as you're on this journey towards growth, I think is really important. So I just wanted to
Yeah,
add that.
yeah, and it reminds me there was a book several years ago written by Terry Deal called The Wizard and the Warrior. And what Terry Deal did is he compared three different basketball coaches. So everyone I think remembers someone named Bobby Knights
Yeah.
at Indiana. He was his style was different, but Bobby Knight, he was after mindset. That's really when you look at it and sit back, he was trying to get the mind of the athlete stronger. Then you look at a John Wooden, a completely different approach. And he would just have the guys put their socks on for a week in the locker room to get ready for the playoffs, and it drove them crazy. And then you got a Mike Krzyzewski, who is a very strategic person, Coach K. But at the end of the day,
Right.
you know what all three were doing? They were working on mindset.
Mindset.
That was the common thread with all three. Their approaches were much different, but I think that's important to pause and think about that. And that I think will be the limiting factor when anyone looks back on a huge accomplishment or milestone. Check your mindset. Um, I just had someone run Boston. She's 50 years old, Heather Yoon. She's 50 years old and just a very talented individual. She had a personal record. She PR'd by 9 minutes. She ran 3 hours and 23 minutes. And we call her AKA Grit Junior. And it's all about mindset. She's not a large person, but she is very much in pose and she's posed and professional. She's gritty and she got it done. And we just talk about that often. Just it's all about that growth mindset.
It's true.
Hmm.
But how do you get, I mean, and that's why I keep kind of wanting to push because like how do you get there? Like how do we help people get there? Do we just say to people, it's going to be hard, whatever you're going after, whether you put yourself in a hard or the hard comes across your doorstep, right? There are hard things in life.
Hmm.
and perhaps lean into them. Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way.
Hmm.
Lean into them. Don't be scared of them because that's where you grow. That's where you learn. That's where you find your grit. That's where you find what you're made of. So I think if we have an expectation that, I mean, it feels great when life is, we just float through life.
Hmm.
It's all, easy and sparkle. But I don't know that like the athlete you just gave the example of, like maybe that's what it is. People such as yourself and the people that the resilience warriors are not scared to put themselves in the hard because you understand that's where you grow. So maybe that's the lesson from coaching and from your experience is to say to people, embrace the hard. I know it sounds crazy.
Well, I can say it differently. Maybe
Okay.
it's maybe commit not to quit. And
Not to
I think
quit.
again, we have one life. And I think too, as I have worked with Liz Wiseman with multipliers and impact players and rookie smarts, when any person is going through life, you really we all have choices to make.
Okay.
And if I put them in maybe two different categories, that you can be a contributor to life. You're making a contribution, you're a good person. I think that is really awesome. Personally, as I look at people that are doing maybe more than just contributing, we're going to call them impact players. And I think anyone on this call, they get a visual what an impact player is. They really can step up. They really make a difference. You don't need to be the CEO. You can be anywhere. You can be the water boy. You can be anybody. So just and socioeconomics and gender and all the other things, it doesn't really matter. But to be an impact player, I think your life's going to be so much more fulfilling. So think about this journey of life that you have a guide, you have a coach, you have a consultant. You can sit there and say, well, I just want to be a contributor. But I think if you follow the yellow brick road in life, I'm thinking about longevity and think about, having an optimal life, that being and striving to be an impact player through your practices and your life and it's going to be much more fulfilling and rewarding. And when you get there, you're going to learn a lot more and you're in a much better place because now you're in a better community with people that are truly excelling. You feel comfortable that you're not the biggest fish in the pond, but you feel comfortable there. It's a very safe place. So that's what I continue to strive for. And I know when I work with kids in education for 20 plus years as a assistant principal, principal, and superintendent, when they did something wrong, it's and behind closed doors. I tell them, what life do you really want? Do you want the tough life or the good life? 99% I want the good life. Great. We've got to make some corrections, but giving them strategies and giving them tools. And I think that's the most important thing. You just can't watch a video or look at an app. You've got to really commit to say, I've got to embrace these strategies. I got to wrestle with them a little bit. I got to get a little bit gritty. But the more I do it and it gets into my DNA, boom, that's your persona.
Hmm. If you watch all my episodes, I'm I don't usually just just sit and but I just feel like I learn and I just have to I have to let what you're saying settle.
Mhm.
It's true.
Yeah.
Hmm. I'd like to add one other piece to this conversation, just as you're talking, we talk about growth mindset and excellence. My PhD is in health and human performance. I'm a strong advocate for physical activity. There are very real physiological benefits to exercising. So maybe you can talk, and I didn't really have that in our notes, but I just think it's important because if you're trying to move your life in a direction to become more physically fit, let's say you are living kind of a sedentary lifestyle and you want to start moving and you want to start feeling better and you want to get out of depression or burn, your life is just out of balance, physical activity is a path forward. And so all these good things that Coach K is talking about in terms of pursuing excellence, there are real physiological benefits to exercising. Can you
Hmm.
talk about that for a minute?
Well, it couldn't even be a minute. I think
I
this
know. Well, for
that'll be another five. That'll be a
another
great five.
episode. We'll do another
Yeah,
episode, but
right.
but it's such an
Well,
important part of this conversation.
yeah, and I think I can kind of capture it and do a nice
Okay.
underhand toss. I think again through my educational life, I've learned a lot. I've learned that the body is truly designed to move, and the body responds to movement. and also not just physically, but mentally. That the brain is kind of a muscle, the plasticity and everything, no matter where you are in life, that you can continue to slow down that decline. So I think you've got kind of when you look at life and lifespan, we've got this peak performance at about 25 when you look at the physical aspect. And then you've got this decline possibly in your lean body mass and your max VO2, your oxygen uptake. However, I know this for sure is that through regular exercise and engaging with people, that the decline hardly drops at all. So if I use a figure just to give a kind of a ballpark, if someone at the age of 25 has a max VO2 of 60 mLs per kg per minute, and they are very active for the next 40 years, they might drop to say 50. Conversely,
Mhm.
if it goes up to 60 at age 25 and you just slowly get on the sedentary lifestyle and put on a lot of body weight and just literally shut down and kind of, crawl into your corner, that your max VO2 can drop from 60 all the way down to 30. 30 is kind of scary. That means you're not very physically fit, plus your lean body mass. When you look at it, as we all age, and all due respect, I know especially women, they've got these golden years, and all of a sudden something happens. I'm not the same girl when I was 16, which is okay. But through exercise and really eating right and good recovery and a healthy lifestyle, it's a no-brainer. So you've got the mental aspect, you've got the spiritual aspect, your ligaments, your tendons, everything in your body are going to work a lot better. Your all the different systems. It is just getting you to a much better place. So that decline is minimal as compared to someone that shuts down and said, "Hey, that was great in my 20s, but at 50s, they're almost in a wheelchair."
Mhm.
It's really scary, but you know what? We are the master of our own ships and in control of our destiny. So it's making choices every day. And it's not that you need to do something that is literally insane, but it's getting up and moving and
Mhm.
engaging with people and having conversations and looking each day as an opportunity. It's a gift. So I think when I look at all the benefits, again, I could just go into great detail, but I'm trying to keep it at a good level. It's a no-brainer. And I know there's people my age that I see, and I know for me, just to say it, it was a very riveting experience that I went to my 50-year high school reunion. That was literally scary.
Mhm.
People ask me, what happened to you? And I go, what do you mean? They go, you look so different. You haven't really aged all that much. And I'm looking at someone that's in a wheelchair and or in a walker, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Wow, this is scary, but I've got to go back to not be critical. I have to think that an active lifestyle would have prevented a lot of things and they'd be in a much better place.
It's the whole point of this podcast is to help educate people, to be physically active, to take care of your physical health, your mental health, the relationships in your lives, right?
Mhm.
Like you said, we have one shot at it. Well, why not trust? Look at my guest. Why not trust his path? Take small steps to move your life forward, and to live a quality of life. So thank you for all that wisdom. Um, Okay, so I don't know if I actually did stay on. This happens all the time. I get so excited with my guests. But I feel like we've definitely covered your coaching philosophy. We talked about grit, longevity. Well, let me ask you this one question and keep an eye on the time as well.
Mhm.
For you, you're 70 and you started you were early, I think you said 21 when you did.
Mhm.
Well, were you athletic before that?
In high
Like
school,
in high school and college? Just
yeah,
curious.
it was a very strange combination. I was a football player in the fall and I was a swimmer in the spring. So I
Okay.
traded my helmet and my shoulder pads for a small little bathing suit and goggles. But I was a better swimmer than I was a football player because where I grew up, it was a dynasty that we had it was like a melting pot. We had so many talented people from various parts of the world, and they were much bigger and much stronger and much faster than I. So I wasn't really a power athlete. And I learned very quickly that that's why I gravitated toward triathlons, is even back in junior high school, we had to do this president's physical fitness test. So you do pull-ups and sit-ups
I
and sit
remember
reach and
that.
the 50-yard dash. I was at terminal velocity at 5 yards. I wasn't running any faster. the genetic makeup of what my parents gave me, I didn't have a lot of fast twitch. So I think in a way it was good to be in a team sport with football because that was kind of the identity where I grew up, but gravitating to where I was going to have success. So I think I had some good experience as a child growing up that I was, but in college, I was literally working two jobs, living on my own, and then boom, I went right into triathlons, and then I met Queen K. So from there, everything worked out. So I was
Okay.
never talented enough to be a collegiate athlete, but I think really at the same time, being in college and being a pro athlete, pro triathlete, gave me that chance to perform at a real high level. That was my go-to.
Okay. So I have two questions, okay, from that.
Yeah.
So for longevity in sport, for the long game of human performance,
Mhm.
what has this looked like for you through the different seasons of your life?
Well,
Because we
it
do have to make peace with that. We do, we can fight back against aging, but there are some physiological changes that we have to make peace with. So what does
Oh
that look
yeah,
like?
yeah. And that's I think that is just really, really on point. That's a great question. And I know that I face it, and I know that as I work with people, we have to be where we are today. I
Mhm.
was on a call with another coach and he's 60. He said, I can't race like I did when I was 48. And I said, you're absolutely correct. As I'm onboarding new people, they want to show me records from 20 years ago. They want to show me things they've done in the past. And I acknowledge it. And I said, that's great, but this is what I've learned. We
Today.
have to live where we are today. And I know that can be very humbling. You're like, wait a minute. I should be able to do that because I did it out. No, no, no. You're here today. 80% of it, you showed up and be grateful that this is going to be an awesome experience and be at peace with yourself. So instead of being like a perfectionist, you're striving for excellence. And what
Mhm.
that means is you gave it your very best on this day. And I think that's okay because at the end of the day, even for a full Ironman, if you talk to someone 6 months after a race, it didn't matter if you were first or 10th or 20th or you're wearing a finisher's t-shirt. Someone in this day and age, they just come up to you, they just start talking to you. They don't really care if you won, they don't care if you were last. They're just like, oh my gosh. And that becomes that inspiration of like, in their mind, they're really curious. And that's something that I see is people get really curious about, do you think I can do that? So the question I ask them that maybe is even better, if I could put you in the Ironman World Championship on the Big Island of Hawaii and we could swim 2.4 miles and bike 112 and we could get to mile 26.1 with just a tenth to go, who would you bring with you to cross that finish line? And
Wow.
that question right there, people go numb. They get very emotional because they talk about a mentor, they talk about a stepmom, they talk about their grandma. And it's when you see the Ironman, that's really when you look at the World Championship, they do an excellent job. That's why people get so emotional. They're like, oh my goodness. So it's very transformative.
Hmm. Another one I just have to sit for a second because I relate to that with my PhD journey. People that I took with me across that stage. So it made me a little bit emotionally. Sorry about that. I understand.
Great.
Okay, my second question.
Mhm.
Queen K. I feel like she should have been on here with us.
I know she should
Tell us
have.
just a bit about Queen K.
Oh wow, I could spend hours on that too. But I think as I looked at my life of just a person that was a little mad doggish and out of control and inner city and a runaway and all those things, I was fortunate to be in a swimming class at San Diego State that Queen K was literally in my same lane. And we're going back and forth, and I was trying to be very nice, but I could feel my heart starting to pound a little bit. My goggles were steaming up, and I looked at her, and before I knew it, we were chatting it up after the swim sessions and before, and one thing led to the next. And there was something about her persona, like she has her house in order. She knows what she wants to do in life. She's from a good family. She wants two kids, and she was like a tomboy that she was very active and doing things. And it was like, whoa, this was cool. And 6 months later, I'm like, we're still dating. For me, that was like a first. I was like, I should deserve a medal for that. But it was just putting that trust of like, hey, if I could spend the rest of my life with anyone, I don't have much to lose. I really don't. And it was rough for me because my parents, like I said, they've been very
Yeah,
nice.
you mentioned
And
that.
And I was like, this marriage thing, it just sounds a little rocky, just rough. But I'm like, oh, come on, man. Anyway, I jumped in, 47 years ago, and she's just got me to a better place. The guy, we've traveled together, we've done sports together. She was very active when she was younger, but now she is like the number one volunteer that she goes to all the races and she volunteers.
Wow.
And she's active and, she's my backbone and my spine. So I think that, our relationship, we've had some highs and lows like anyone, but you work through those things.
Like,
But at the end of the day, she's like, hey, I got your back and you got my back. And it's really cool. So, we enjoy life and all the relationships. But we're better together. And I know that when she's right, I'm right, and vice versa. So it's been huge, but she deserves a ton of credit because she puts up with all my crazy stuff, things like
well,
that.
tell Queen K that we think she's awesome, and she's welcome on the show anytime,
Well,
together, or just wants to come on. I'd love to meet her.
Well, and I think just from your angle, that might be because she's writing a book too. We're not competitive, but it seems like as we look back in our life, we always seem to be doing things together. Like I started my master's and she started her master's and she got into administration and I got into administration, but she started
Awesome.
writing her book about a kind of in the narrative of a Sherpa. And I think that would be huge for people of how do you manage someone that's kind of a little OCD on this triathlon thing, or they got the bug, or that's their drug of choice. And I'm doing more on, finishing stronger about principles of life and leadership and longevity. But I think that would be a great podcast because she can tell you behind the curtain of what it's really like to go through life with someone that has made this commitment to optimize health and wellness and work with people.
I would love that. And she can also talk about, I don't know, when will that book be? When do you think? Which she's well, we can talk offline, but she's welcome to come on to talk about the book, once it's published or leading up to
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
However she,
yeah.
however she like to do it. She's
That
welcome.
sounds,
And
yeah.
you too, when your book comes out. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm going through at a good pace. It feels good. And I know that I've got a coach and consultant that writing a book and it's the DIY. I can do it myself. No, I know for sure that because I've invested in a coach and a consultant, it's making this much more enjoyable, much more fulfilling. And the finished product as I go through process, it's 100% better. So I feel good. And it becomes actually very addicting. I thrive on just being there, looking at prompts, and it's just guiding me through the book and just sitting back and getting on some good music and just typing away. It's just, yeah, it's a rush.
I think if I had to kind of pull the theme to this episode together, I mean, I'm going to go back and listen to this a few times. I suggest our listeners do the same because there's a lot here. But if I had to pull out a theme from talking with you today, you're demonstrating what a growth mindset looks like and what excellence looks like because you're a coach and you coach people, but you just told us you have a coach. So you're open-minded. You have an open mind towards growth. You recognize that and you said this when we were talking, lean on people who maybe know a little bit more than you. You go to professionals, right? What and let them continue to teach you because we can't know everything. So
Mhm.
you lean on people who know more than you, and that's how you pursue excellence.
I would agree 100%. And I think too, what I've learned is that it's not only mindset that you've got to, depending upon where you are, if you're kind of like the client or the coach, you've got to have this infectious energy. And not that you're over the top, but you're aligned to that client and it's just mirroring them and getting them in sync with you. And I think when you can bring really good energy into any situation, if it's a one-on-one, if it's a group setting, even for yourself, your subconscious mind, try to maintain that infectious energy because in your mind, if you start to believe that, that reality starts to happen and just a little bit of momentum. And yeah, I think it's a winning combination.
Well, I was going to ask you if you had any final thoughts before we end the episode today. Anything you would like to add to what you just said? Because that was kind of like going to be my last, just giving you the opportunity to share anything else that you feel like perhaps we haven't covered.
Yeah, I'll touch on a couple things, I think, and kind of, closing things out and closing the loop. I would say the first thing I would share with anyone is play the long game. I think instant success is it can be a little bit false at times. It's not sustainable. So play the long game in life and anything you do with your health, your goals, your objectives, things like that. I think the other thing is that have a good team around you that smart people do that, and a good leader, I've learned that they're going to bring people on that are better than them, that are maybe a little smarter than them, but I think a team that is really really, because you're going to need them at any time, and I think that's just a no-brainer. Even if people kind of disagree with you, you look back on the great leaders of life, and Abraham Lincoln's probably the best. He brought in a lot of people into his cabinet that they weren't on the same page, but it made him a better person. And I think the next one is just kind of that, because I've been to Hawaii so much and it's kind of our second home, is that the Ohana, this is family. And I think when you have that mindset, no one is left behind, and be gracious and be kind and give back and kind of blend it in with that. We talked about excellence, but I tend to use the word Kaizen. And Kaizen is that continuous improvement, small sequential steps. And I think Kaizen of excellence, not perfectionism, is really, really key. So when you blend all those things together, when you look at Ohana, when you look at Kaizen, when you look at having a great team and you play the long game, uh,
Winning formula.
it is the winning formula. And also, too, the other thing that I find, and it happens repeatedly, you've got to take action. I love research, I love data, I love metrics, but at some point in time, especially when you get into the arena, that doesn't matter anymore. You've got to be very intuitive, and you've got to use that mindset to get in that state of flow to say, no matter what you're doing, if you're riding, you're in that state of flow where it just comes naturally, just like when you're competing, just like when you're on your job, if you're doing anything. So those are things that I see versus, I don't quite have enough data. I need a little bit more. I think I've learned is, hey, this is what we know today. We're going to make a decision and we're going to move forward. If we hit a speed bump, we'll back up and we'll try it again. But you've got to continue to take action versus it's maybe a victim's mindset or mentality. And you've got to look at the mirror and say, I'm going to own this today and I'm going to be a better person. And people will admire you much more when you actually do fail and you acknowledge it. But then you've got to just keep moving on.
There's another one. You've left me speechless a lot today.
Wow.
Thank you.
I didn't think I could do that.
Well, it's just all these things I want to say, but I don't want to cloud what you've said. But how
Yeah.
do you spell Kazan?
Kaizen,
Kaizen.
Kaizen.
And where does that come from?
It's a Japanese word. And I know for us, that in our area that we have stores called Trader Joe's. And
Hmm.
I don't know if you have Trader Joe's where you are, but
Love Trader Joe's.
I would challenge you next time you go to Trader Joe's and they ask you, did you find everything today? You're very casual, you're in character and say, got it, I did, but tell me where the Kaizen was. I didn't find that. They will flip out because that's one of their core values is
Really?
continuing. Yeah, that's one of
Okay.
their core values. And one of our sons we did name, his name is Kai, but we spelled it
Oh,
KY, and it's that Kaizen, but he's got blue eyes, and it's all about Hawaii. So yeah, Kaizen is just you're continuously trying to improve in small sequential steps, and I think that keeps you in the game. Like, okay, do I have my Kaizen? And there's symbols, and I know that Queen K makes soap, so she'll do the little Japanese things, and she'll do Kaizen on there, and it just blows people away. So
it's incredible.
yeah,
Coach K, thank you so much for sharing with us
yeah,
and going back to like some of the roots and where it
hmm
started and taking us through this journey. I know there's a lot more. We've been on for a bit, so and there's a lot more we could talk about. So grateful for your time and I like to always say before I sign off here, this podcast will always be about educating and motivating people to live their best lives and
yes,
from the inside out, really. So
thank you.
really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Gordon.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.